Yes, so in this assignment we have to talk about some subjects that we learned about in our course that was the US. And we have like 7 subjects here, and we're just gonna draw some and talk about it for a couple minutes. Let me just draw. So the first one I drew is Obama, and Obama was one of the first, well, he was the first black president of the United States, and he's been like a role model in like the civil rights movement that happened like a long time ago, but like now he kind of like unraveled something from like the past, because he became like the first black president, and he's representing like equality. And yeah, in his time he also made the Affordable Care Act, which was an act that helped every single American get an insurance for like health, so a health insurance. And yeah, now this Affordable Care Act is kind of like jeopardized, but hopefully it'll still be there for a while. Let me just draw another one. The second one I drew was like the Cold War. And the Cold War was, well, a war that didn't have any like old school war kind of happening. So like what happened was that the United States and Russia was kind of like in a feud, and they were threatening each other with like nuclear weapons. And if this Cold War would have turned hot, yeah, we would have had like the first nuclear war, but luckily nothing happened.
Yeah, so I drew this paper, and this stands 9/11. 9/11 was a terror attack in New York. 2 planes flew into the Twin Towers, and the guys behind it was Osama bin Laden and his men. The terror attack took place in New York, as I said, and it took place. The terror attack was in 2001, and it was the first time that we have seen such a terror attack this big. It had never have been that big before in the newer history. So it was really scary also here in Denmark, because people wasn't prepared for such things happening. And it wasn't just the Twin Towers that got hit, it was also Pentagon that got hit by these terrorists. So the whole thing with 9/11 was really scary, because the humankind wasn't really prepared for it, and all of these security things we're walking through today is like coming from 9/11, because when you go to the planes, people is kind of scared that you might take over the plane and fly it into some buildings.
Okay, I'll draw the moon landing. Right, so the moon landing was sort of a result of the Cold War, because the Soviet Union and America was, having this who can do it better sort of fight. And they wanted to have this, they were having this space race, as you call it, where it was about, discovering most of space. At the time, Russia was ahead or the Soviet Union was ahead, because they sent a man into space as the first, named Yuri something. And so the Americans decided that they wanted to land on the moon, because they would claim the moon as American ground. And so they did, it was a really big thing. It took a lot of years, and a lot of people believe the moon landing to be fake because it seemed very unreal that they were able to do it at the time and in that short of a period. But there's a lot of conspiracies against it, but it's also it's what you believe, but it's most likely that it wasn't fake, because it would be really hard to fake something like that with the technology back then, the video recording. I'll just take another one. Alright, so school shootings. School shootings is something they have, I'm afraid, a lot of in the United States. It's a really horrible thing, but it's mostly because of their Second Amendment, which is that everyone has the right to bear arms, so that everyone has the right to own a gun. And a lot of Americans feel that, it makes them more safe to have a gun, even though it's proven differently.
I would like to tell you about D-Day, or Operation Overlord, as it is also known. Just to give a quick overview, it was on the 6th of June 1944 at around about 6:30 a.m. in the morning. It was President Dwight D. Eisenhower and Premier Minister Winston Churchill, and Eisenhower was the president in the US, and Winston Churchill was the Prime Minister in Britain. They were the two, you could call, overheads behind the operation, and it was a well-planned assault on 5 beaches along a 50-mile stretch of coast. There was a lot of doubt about where it should take place, and they had planned it for a very long time, and actually several times, but the Nazis gained information about the attack, or the prior attacks, which never happened, because they got they had spies, so they had inside information. But this one, they didn't get any information about, which is also why it was a succeeded attack. The Nazis had many strongholds at the beach, and the reason why the Allies chose Normandy is, firstly, it's a very short way from Great Britain to the beach, and it's called Pas de Calais, and it's the narrowest point in the north of France. The Allies had special built tanks, or special built boats, which could ship tanks, and 160,000 crossed the English Channel, and 10,000 there were 10,000 casualties, and 6,700 of them were Americans. And the Nazis had they had Atlantic walls to prevent an invasion from the Allies, and advanced weapons, which I think was the MG42. Now I would like to tell you about the Civil Rights Movement, also known as the African American Civil Rights Movement. The movement had a lot of important people like Martin Luther King Jr., Rosa Parks, and Malcolm X. Martin Luther King Jr. was a son of a priest, and there wasn't one leader, but he was the main figure in the Civil Rights Movement, and he was the one leading the way. He was very, very important for the Civil Rights Movement because he had such a big influence on it. Rosa Parks was another one, and she kind of started everything in 1955. Well, she didn't start it, but she gave it like a push. On the December the 1st, or the 1st of December, she sat in the bus in the front, and back then whites sat in the front and blacks in the back, but she was in the front, and when a white male came to ask her to move her and go to the back, she refused, and this was made a big thing about, and all the blacks boycotted the Montgomery buses. They fought a lot, and it wasn't without any cause. Martin Luther King died. He was assassinated. Was standing on a balcony just after or before a speech. Malcolm X, who was also an important figure, but he was a Muslim, was also assassinated. But although all these sacrifices, they got the Civil Rights Act in 1964, which banned discrimination based on color, sex, race, and religion, and ended all the segregation. And you could, like, Jim Crow laws were, I think they were abandoned, but they also kind of stopped it once and for all.